The day James confessed to the beautiful transfer student, everyone thought I'd break down, rush over crying and try to stop him. But even until the confession ended, I didn't show up. James didn't know that. At that very moment, I was wearing his roommate's hoodie, sitting on his roommate's bed with an innocent look on my face, asking, "I got your bed wet. How are you going to sleep tonight?" Raphael looked away, his Adam's apple bobbing, and threw me a towel. "Go dry your hair. I'll change the sheets, and then you can sleep." Chapter 1. James was going to confess to that beautiful transfer student. He gave everyone a heads up, making sure no one told me. What he didn't know was that someone already spilled the beans. Everyone knew I liked James, dreamed of marrying him. This time, James had fallen hard for that girl at first sight. People expected me to cause a scene, break down, or go all out in a dramatic fit. This kind of love triangle drama? Who wouldn't want to watch? Everyone waited for me to break down and storm in, turning the whole scene upside down. But unfortunately, even after James successfully confessed, I still hadn't shown up. People who came to watch were left feeling disappointed. Even James didn't seem all that thrilled. He wrapped his arm around his new girlfriend and pulled out his phone. No calls or messages. James frowned slightly. Then he turned to the crowd and said, "Drinks are on me tonight. Everyone's invited." The students around him cheered. That's when I finally stepped out from behind the bushes. Someone with sharp eyes spotted me and immediately shouted, "It's Anna! Anna's here!" I knew it! There's no way Anna wouldn't come. James looked up suddenly, and when he saw me, the corners of his mouth lifted ever so slightly. Chapter 2. I ignored the people who had been waiting to see the drama unfold. I walked straight up to James. "Anna." James pulled his new girlfriend even closer. He looked at me and said coolly, "Feelings can't be forced. We've known each other for more than 10 years, and I don't want to say anything harsh that might ruin that. From now on, I'll still see you as a little sister. If you need anything, you can still come to me." Then he lowered his voice. "There are too many people watching. Don't make a scene, just go back." "James." I interrupted him and took a step closer. He frowned again. "Anna, be reasonable." I smiled and handed him the bracelet I had just taken off my wrist. "I'm just here to return this to you." James's face darkened instantly when he saw the bracelet. "Anna, what game are you playing now? Take the bracelet back. I won't be chasing after you anymore." James stared at me, his voice growing colder. "I don't care about the money. If you don't want it, just throw it away." As soon as he finished speaking, I turned and tossed the bracelet into the trash can nearby. "You can throw away all the things you gave me too." With that, I didn't look back and walked away. Chapter 3. James stood in place until Anna's figure disappeared from sight. His expression still remained somewhat grim. A companion next to him quickly tried to smooth things over. "Oh, Anna's just trying to save face. She's pretending. Trust me, James. She'll regret it before the night is over. Who knows? Maybe as soon as we leave, she'll be digging through the trash, crying." James chuckled at that. "Let her be dramatic. If it weren't for the respect our families have for each other, who would bother dealing with her?" All right. Don't get mad. Tonight's a celebration. Don't let her ruin it." James glanced at his new girlfriend. Stunning and radiant, he cast Anna's annoying face out of his mind. After all, by tomorrow, Anna would act like nothing ever happened. She would wait for him outside the dorm, clinging to him on the way to class. He had seen this drama play out too many times over the years. Chapter 4. By the time I reached the riverbank, the rain had already started pouring. I stood under my umbrella, thinking about the dreams I had been having lately. In the dream, I caused a scene because of James confessing to Laura. I cried and made a fuss. And to force him to break up with her, I jumped into the river that night. And what was the result? I nearly lost my life. James stayed by my side in the hospital for only 5 minutes before leaving me behind for good. The Jiang family, who adopted me, felt I had embarrassed them with my suicide attempt. And because of James' cold attitude, they considered me worthless, forcing me to drop out of school and sending me back to my biological parents, who were abusive and addicted to gambling and drugs. From that point on, My life spiraled downward until I died miserably in a foreign land. After my death, it was the person I had always kept at a distance and feared who collected my broken remains. As for James, he was living a blissful newlywed life, and never once showed up. In these past few days, everything in the dream started coming true. If not for those dreams, I'd be frantically calling James right now, ready to jump into the river to threaten him again. I'm thankful for these dreams, though they've made me feel like I've been given a second chance, a chance to change my doomed fate. Bit by bit, the third time I dialed that number, someone finally answered. I gripped my phone tightly, pressing it to my ear. Raphael's name lingered on my tongue before I softly spoke it. The heavy rain drowned out the noise of the world. All I could hear was Raphael's deep, slightly lazy voice on the other end. Anna? Raphael. It's raining heavily. I'm stuck by the river and can't get back. Can you come and get me? Chapter 5. There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. I nervously clutched my umbrella, my palms slick with sweat. In the dream, when Raphael collected my remains, it seemed like he cried. His tears fell one by one onto my rotting flesh and bones. Even in the dream, I could feel that searing pain. Later, he carried a small bottle of my ashes with him for the rest of his life, and he spent his life alone. Tears welled up in my eyes, and I let out a choked sob. Why are you crying? Raphael's voice suddenly came through, still indifferent. His tone held a trace of impatience. I didn't say I wouldn't come. When will you get here? Wait for me. 20 minutes. All right. I'll wait for you. Raphael. He didn't say anything else and hung up. 15 minutes later, I gave my umbrella to a mother and her child who were seeking shelter from the rain. So by the time Raphael arrived, I was completely soaked. He stepped out of the car, his lips pressed into a tight line, his expression as cold as ice. I pushed my wet bangs aside and looked up at him with a bright smile. Raphael, you're right on time. Anna, you might as well die from stupidity. With a cold expression, he grabbed my arm and shoved me into the car. Then he threw a soft blanket at me. Dry off. Don't make a mess of my car. He glanced at me through the rearview mirror, then skillfully turned the car around. Oh, I obediently wrapped myself in the blanket, but I couldn't help sneaking glances at him as he focused on driving. When he wasn't showing any expression, he always seemed so distant and unapproachable. A lot of girls at school liked him, but no one dared confess. He and James were roommates. I often visited James' dorm, and every time I came, Raphael always looked like he couldn't stand me. Just like now, even though he came to pick me up, his attitude was still icy. When he had pushed me into the car earlier, his grip had been extra firm. My wrist still hurt, with a red mark left behind. It was impossible to tell he had secretly liked me all along. I slowly lowered my gaze. Everything from the dream had come true, but because of the changes I've made, a lot of things have also shifted. But Raphael, would he still like me? If he never liked me in the first place, wouldn't I just be bothering him by doing all of this? Back to the dorm? Raphael suddenly glanced at me. My heart skipped a beat, and before I could think, I blurted out, "Yeah, back to your dorm." Chapter 6. Raphael gripped the steering wheel and sneered. James won't be coming back tonight. I know. I clenched the edge of the blanket, tightening it bit by bit. I'm not looking for him. Suddenly, the car screeched to a halt on the side of the road. Raphael turned to look at me. The frostiness in his eyes sent a chill through my heart. Anna, don't you dare make me part of your games. I'm not. He stared at me for a moment, then picked up his phone. I'll call you a car. You can go back yourself. Raphael. I bit my lip hard and snatched his phone away. Anna. He looked at me, but there was no anger or disgust in his eyes. Instead, his gaze was deep, filled with countless emotions. I suddenly felt a sadness I couldn't quite explain. Raphael. I don't want to go back to the dorm. They're all laughing at me. I'm too scared to go home either. Can't you let me stay in your dorm for one night? I hid his phone behind my back, my voice growing quieter. Of course. If you really hate me and don't want to see me, then forget it. As soon as the words left my mouth, tears began to silently roll down my cheeks. One by one, quiet and without a sound. Raphael didn't say another word, but he restarted the car. The car headed towards the school, finally stopping in front of his dorm building. Chapter 7. I followed Raphael into the dorm. He went to his wardrobe and handed me a clean sweatshirt. The bathroom's over there. He was tall, so the sweatshirt looked big on me. It hung down to my knees, like a dress. After my shower, I came out wearing only the sweatshirt, my bare legs showing. Raphael glanced at me, then quickly looked away. I walked past James's bed and sat down on his. My wet hair dripped onto the sheets, quickly dampening them. The scent of Raphael's shampoo and body wash lingered on me. In the small room, the shared scent spread quietly, an unspoken tension growing between us. Raphael grabbed a pack of cigarettes, coughed lightly. "I'll go have a smoke." He stepped out onto the balcony. I curiously looked around his bed. The sheets were light gray, clean and tidy. His desk had a computer and some books, neatly arranged. I was about to check out the items on his desk when my phone suddenly rang. James's name flashed on the screen. I didn't pick up, but the phone kept ringing, again and again. Finally, I put it on silent and tossed it back in my bag. "Raphael." I called out to him on the balcony. He quickly turned around, putting out the cigarette before walking over. "What's up?" I sat on the bed, having to tilt my head up to see him. Raphael and I locked eyes for a couple of seconds before he looked away, but I noticed his ears were a bit red. "I got your sheets wet. How are you going to sleep tonight?" Chapter 8. He glanced at me, then at the damp spots on the sheets. His Adam's apple bobbed visibly before he turned around and grabbed a towel. "Go dry your hair first. I'll change the sheets. Then you can sleep." He opened the closet to get clean sheets, holding the towel. I couldn't help but smile at the way his ears had turned completely red earlier. When I came back with dry hair, Raphael had already made the bed with fresh sheets. "Go ahead and sleep. And you?" He pulled out a chair, not even turning his head. "I'll play some games." Oh, feeling a bit down, I sat on his bed. Raphael grabbed his headphones, about to put them on, when his phone suddenly rang. He glanced at the screen, then looked back at me before answering. "James, what's up?" My heart clenched, and I instinctively held my breath. "Yeah, I'm in the dorm. You said someone saw Anna come to our dorm?" Raphael turned again to look at me. In a panic. I didn't wait for him to finish. I got up and straddled his lap, wrapping my arms around his neck. Just as Raphael tried to push me away, I leaned into his ear and whispered, "Raphael, tell him I'm not here." Under my fingers, where they rested on his neck, I felt his skin burn instantly. I saw the veins in his neck tighten and bulge. His Adam's apple bobbed violently, his heartbeat pounding faster and faster. I looked up at him, and he looked down at me. His eyes darkened, desire slowly filling them. "No, I've been in the dorm the whole time. She didn't come here." "Yeah, maybe ask someone else." Raphael hung up the phone. He tossed it aside, and his long fingers gripped my waist through the sweatshirt. He pulled me closer, pressing me against him. I could feel the heat radiating from him. My head buzzed, and my first instinct was to run, but Raphael held me tighter. "Anna." His voice was hoarse. His hot breath brushed against my ear. My neck. I shrank away, trying to avoid it, but his lips found mine instead. "Don't tease me. I don't want to touch you in a place like this." Chapter 9. Raphael. I shifted my body, trying to adjust my position. The volcano seemed ready to erupt, fierce and terrifying. In a brief moment to catch my breath, I finally found a chance to speak. "If you don't want to touch me, why did you kiss me?" Raphael lowered his head slightly, his forehead pressed against mine. Our breaths mingled as he closed his eyes, seemingly trying to calm himself. "And by the way, do you even know how to kiss?" My lips are all swollen. "Anna." Raphael didn't open his eyes. He only slightly loosened the grip he had on my waist. His fingers were long and strong, even through the hoodie. The pressure on my waist made me feel both pain and a torturous anticipation. "Raphael." I couldn't help but frown, trying to push his hand away, but Raphael grasped my fingers instead. "Anna, don't move. I'll be gentler this time." As he finished speaking, Raphael's hands slid to my lower back. He pulled me closer, pressing my entire body into his. This kiss was long, yet gentle, but in the end, he lost control a bit, kissing me deeply. Raphael, I lightly hit him, and in a brief moment to breathe, I bit him. Anna. Raphael's voice was hoarse, barely holding back. His entire body tensed. The heat in his palms felt like it would melt me. Raphael suddenly buried his face in the crook of my neck, letting out a low groan. The volcano erupted and then calmed. But soon, it seemed ready to erupt again. Raphael, however, gently pushed me away and helped me to my feet. I noticed his expression was odd. There was also a strange scent in the air. I couldn't help but ask, Raphael, what just happened? His ears were bright red. The man who was usually so cool and distant now had a deep, burning desire in his eyes. I'm going to take a shower. He stood up, lowered his gaze, and pulled down the hem of the hoodie I was wearing. You should sleep first. Before I could say anything, Raphael had already walked quickly into the bathroom. Chapter 10. When the sound of the water started, I lay on Raphael's bed and rolled over. I used the back of my hand to cool my burning face. I think I was beginning to understand something, but Raphael was tall, and he exercised a lot, with lean muscle all over. His nose was sharp, his jawline striking, his fingers were long and strong. There's no way he's, well, that quick in that area, right? Could it be that he's never had a girlfriend before? Or never been close to a girl? As I thought about this, sweet bubbles seemed to swell up inside me. I lay on Raphael's pillow and unexpectedly found a pearl earring under it. The earring looked familiar. It was one of my favorite pairs. One time when I came to James's dorm, I accidentally lost one, and no matter how much I searched, I couldn't find it. Turns out, Raphael had found it. Suddenly, I remembered. In all the dreams I had before, this earring had always been with Raphael. I stared in a daze for a while before putting the earring back under his pillow. The sound of the hairdryer stopped. Raphael came out wearing a dark blue loungewear set, with the steam rising from his shower. His skin looked almost like smooth jade. His hair fell softly, and the usual sharp and cold demeanor he had was somewhat softened. For some reason, Raphael looked a bit well-behaved at that moment. I was just about to call out to him when I heard faint voices outside the door. My expression changed, and I froze. Among the voices, one was clearly James's. Raphael's expression darkened as well, but he reacted much faster than me. By the time James opened the door, my clothes were already stuffed into the wardrobe. My shoes were hidden in the farthest corner under the bed, and Raphael was already lifting the covers to get into bed. There was only one nightlight on in the dorm, casting a dim glow. I hid under Raphael's blanket. The slight rise was hardly noticeable. Even if James came closer, he wouldn't see anything unusual unless he looked very carefully. Why'd you turn off the lights so early? James asked curiously. Got caught in the rain. My head hurts a bit, Raphael said, while under the covers, lightly gripping my restless wrist. The bed was only 3 meters wide, and Raphael, with his tall frame and long legs, took up a lot of space. My entire body was practically pressed against his. My breath softly brushed against his waist. I could feel the muscles in his abdomen tighten. All right then. James didn't turn on the lights. He sat in a chair and grabbed his phone to make a call. After several unanswered calls, James was visibly frustrated. Raphael, do you think Anna's doing this on purpose? What? I confessed to Laura today, and now she's doing this to mess with me. The news just reported that a college girl committed suicide over a failed relationship. I freaked out, ditched Laura, and raced over there, but it wasn't her. I've been calling her all night. She hasn't answered once, and now she's nowhere to be found. James slammed his phone on the table. She's doing this on purpose, deliberately ruining my night. Then James let out a cold laugh. I bet she's going to cling to me for the rest of her life. Not necessarily. Raphael suddenly spoke up. James was surprised. Not necessarily? Raphael, you've seen how she's clung to me these past 2 years. You've always been annoyed by her, never giving her the time of day. Hearing this, I couldn't resist biting Raphael's waist. He winced, instinctively blocking with his hand, but his fingers brushed against my lips, so I lightly bit his fingers. Raphael's whole body tensed up, and he let out a low, strained hiss. Chapter 11. What's wrong with you? Nothing, just a leg cramp. Raphael's voice was hoarse, and after he finished speaking, he coughed twice. All right, you rest. I won't bother you anymore, James said as he stood up. I'll just use the bathroom before I leave. As he pushed open the bathroom door, something suddenly crossed my mind. Earlier, I had washed my socks while showering, and now, they were still hanging in the bathroom. Sure enough, when James came out after a couple of minutes, there was an amused smirk on his face. Raphael, did you bring a girl over to the dorm? You've hidden it well. Who's the lucky lady that managed to capture the heart of our untouchable Raphael? Don't talk nonsense. James took a few steps closer to the bed. Sleeping early. Huh? Hiding someone under the covers? James. Raphael's voice suddenly turned cold. All right. I won't come closer. James stopped, but still glanced curiously at Raphael's bed. Do you have protection? I've got some spares if you need them. Raphael, hidden under the blanket, gently gripped the back of my neck, pressing me against his chest to keep me still. Only then did he glance at James, his tone cold. Don't joke about girls like that. Seriously? James raised an eyebrow, a bit surprised. Raphael's jaw tightened, his Adam's apple bobbing slightly. Yeah, if the lights were a bit brighter, James would have noticed the strained expression on Raphael's face. After all, he was holding my neck to keep me still, but the rest of me wasn't exactly immobile. With the blanket covering us, no one could see, so I decided to run my hand over Raphael's abs. Each time I touched him, his muscles tensed a little more. I stealthily moved my hand lower, and when I reached his V-line, Raphael had quite the reaction. It even startled me a little. Chapter 12. All right then, I won't disturb you too. I'll stay somewhere else tonight. James, with a knowing look, glanced once more at Raphael's bed, though he couldn't help feeling a bit disdainful. He had always seen Raphael as someone aloof, seemingly disinterested in women and cold toward them, but now, it seemed Raphael wasn't as celibate and self-controlled as everyone thought. If James's guess was right, there was a girl hiding under Raphael's blanket. Quite the scandalous scene. However, James didn't push the issue. He and Raphael got along well enough. Although Raphael's popularity with girls sometimes annoyed James a little, there wasn't any real animosity between them. James turned and left the dorm. Once the door clicked shut, I threw the blanket off. Raphael. I was about to suffocate under there. Raphael leaned against the headboard, his deep gaze fixed on me. The dim light cast shadows across his sharp, handsome features. I found myself staring, captivated. They say people look more beautiful under soft light. It's true for men as well. The play of shadows made Raphael look even more striking, enhancing the atmosphere. Anna. Raphael slowly sat up. He reached out, gently brushing the messy hair away from my face. Then, cupping my face in his hands, he spoke seriously. I'm not annoyed with you, nor have I been giving you the cold shoulder. Don't take what he said to heart. After saying that, Raphael let go of my face. He lifted the blanket and got out of bed. Go to sleep. And you, Raphael? He grabbed a pack of cigarettes and pointed to the balcony. I'll have a smoke. Sleep. Just then, I sneezed unexpectedly. Raphael paused mid-step. I tugged on his pajama sleeve, frowning pitifully. I think I'm getting a cold. My head hurts. Raphael looked at me for a moment. Let go of me. I'll get you some medicine. After I took the medicine, I still held on to him. Raphael. I feel cold. The blanket's too thin. But this time, Raphael gently pushed my hand away. Anna. James has already left. You don't need to act like this anymore. Chapter 13. What does it have to do with him? Raphael chuckled bitterly. What were you doing by the river tonight? I finally snapped back to reality. James had mentioned earlier that a girl had jumped into the river, leading Raphael to misunderstand. He thought I went there because I couldn't take it anymore and was seeking to end things. He assumed that calling him and going back to the dorm was my way of getting back at James. In fact, I understood why he would think that. These past 2 years, the Jiang family foster parents had been pressing me hard. After finding their real daughter, they had planned to send me back to my biological parents. But eventually, they kept me, probably because they thought I still had some value for a marriage alliance. So to me, James felt like a lifeline. We grew up together, like childhood sweethearts. I thought that, at least, there would be some feelings left between us, that he would save me from this mess. I put all my hopes on James, but in everyone else's eyes, that only proved how madly in love I was with him, especially to Raphael. He was James's roommate. How many moments of my obsessive entanglement had he witnessed? Raphael, I wanted to explain, but he was already standing up. Set your alarm. Leave early tomorrow. Don't let anyone see you. After all, these things aren't good for a girl's reputation. Raphael. But he didn't stop or turn around. I gritted my teeth hard. Then what about all those times you kissed me tonight? And what just happened? Aren't you going to take responsibility? Raphael suddenly stopped in his tracks. He turned back to look at me. I sat on the bed, my eyes red, but I held back the tears. I know you hate me. Every time I've come here before, you always ignored me. But tonight, thank you for picking me up and letting me stay. If you really don't want to have anything to do with me anymore, I'll leave now. I got up from the bed. I couldn't find my shoes. But it didn't matter. I walked barefoot toward the door. As I passed by Raphael with my head lowered, silent tears were already streaming down my face. Anna. Raphael grabbed my arm. I told you. I don't hate you. Then are you going to take responsibility? I shook off his hand, stubbornly looking up at him. You kissed me, held me, and did all that. Raphael suddenly gripped my chin and kissed me fiercely. Anna. He spoke against my lips, his breath growing heavier. If you're going to mess with me, then go all the way. I wrapped my arms around his slim waist, standing on tiptoe to meet his deep kiss. Okay. Chapter 14. During the short National Day holiday, I went to the city where my biological parents lived. I stayed there for 3 days. By the time I left, those despicable people, who indulged in drinking, gambling, and all manner of evil, had already been taken away by the police. What awaited them was the harsh and unforgiving judgment of the law. Human trafficking, gambling, forcing good people into prostitution, thanks to the dreams. I had ironclad evidence of every crime. I didn't need to wait for another life or for reincarnation. In this life, I could finally rid myself of those devils and ensure they faced the punishment they deserved. As I boarded the plane, I let out a long sigh of relief. The biggest burden on my heart had been lifted. At that moment, I felt an overwhelming sense of freedom and relaxation. When the plane landed in Beijing, the first thing I did was send Raphael a message to let him know I had arrived safely. He had no idea of the real reason for my trip. He thought I had just gone on a short vacation with my friends. I'll come to see you tonight. Is your place all tidied up? Raphael had moved to an apartment off campus. He was in his final year, barely needing to go back to school. Besides, living with James in the same dorm wasn't exactly convenient. Everything's ready. Should I pick you up? Sounds good. Anna, what's up? It's James's birthday today. He's throwing a party tonight, and he asked me to bring my girlfriend. I had completely forgotten that James's birthday fell on National Day. Anna, do you want to come with me? I didn't answer immediately, feeling a bit conflicted. It wasn't that I didn't want to make my relationship with Raphael public. It was just that the Jiang family would probably cut ties with me soon. When that happened, my shameful background would be exposed to the world. I knew Raphael wouldn't care, but I couldn't bear the thought of him being criticized because of me. Just like in the dreams, they would accuse him of throwing away his family for an unworthy woman, of being unfilial and dishonorable, of breaking his parents' hearts. But, just as Raphael had said that day, I was the one who pursued him first, so I should follow through. You can't have everything without paying a price. Raphael. I took a deep breath. Do you want me to come? Yes, he replied without hesitation. Then come pick me up. I'll go with you. Holding my phone, I glanced at my reflection in the glass window. I was smiling when I said those words, and the smile was surprisingly bright. Anna, look outside. For a moment, my heart seemed to skip a beat. As I turned, it felt like something out of a slow-motion scene from a movie. The smile on my face continued to bloom, and the sounds from the airport speakers faded into the distance. In the sea of people, I saw Raphael. I only saw Raphael. I dropped my suitcase and ran towards him without a second thought. Raphael didn't move, but he opened his arms to me. I leaped into his embrace, and he caught me effortlessly. Despite the force of my jump, he didn't take a single step back. I wrapped my arms around his neck, my face beaming with joy. Wow, your core strength is impressive. He glanced down at me with a soft chuckle. My waist is strong too. Want to test it? I poked at his firm abs, leaning in to whisper in his ear with a playful giggle. But you're a little quick. You know, Anna. He sounded exasperated. But in the end, he was still young and full of pride, his eyes brimming with determination. Just you wait, and don't beg for mercy, crying won't help. Chapter 15. As usual, James invited a bunch of people to his birthday party tonight. Laura had dressed up especially for the occasion, looking stunningly beautiful. The two of them sitting together made a truly attractive pair. Laura was basking in the compliments from a group of girls. She couldn't help but glance at James, but he seemed a bit distracted. James. Laura called him several times before he finally snapped out of it. What is it? It's getting late, and everyone's hungry. What's the rush? Not everyone's here yet. Who's still missing? Yeah, who hasn't arrived? Raphael hasn't shown up yet. Oh, that reminds me. Anna hasn't come either. Do you think Anna will come? It's James's birthday. Anna wouldn't miss a day like this. James abruptly cut them off. I didn't invite her, and even if she comes, I won't let her in. James, don't get angry. It's your birthday today. Laura quickly soothed him with her soft tone. Don't let someone irrelevant ruin the mood. All right? You're absolutely right. James glanced at his girlfriend beside him. Laura was truly beautiful. Anna was pretty too, but not in the same bright and striking way as Laura. That's why, back then, Laura had caught his eye at first glance, but after winning her over, he realized she wasn't all that special. This past month, Anna had stopped waiting for him outside the dorm. She no longer clung to him for classes or meals. She had suddenly vanished from his world. Even when they occasionally crossed paths at school, she would turn away and avoid him. James had to admit, it felt strange. Yes, he chalked it all up to habit. He just wasn't used to someone who had revolved around him daily suddenly changing her attitude. He didn't like Anna, and he certainly wouldn't upset the elders for that imposter heiress. But after all, they had known each other for years. James thought to himself, just for tonight, if Anna couldn't hold back and came looking for him, he wouldn't even need her to bow down and apologize. If she just teared up and cried a little, he would still leave her a spot by his side. Suddenly, the door to the room was pushed open. Guess who I just saw? Said a guy as he entered with a mischievous look, his eyes landing on James. Who? Stop teasing us. Yeah, who is it? It couldn't be Anna, right? It's Anna. James, we told you, Anna can't stay away from you. Chapter 16. See, she couldn't resist coming tonight. James said nothing, but the gloomy expression on his face visibly lightened. Laura, however, looked displeased. She tugged at James's sleeve and, with a slightly aggrieved tone, whispered, James, can you make Anna leave? She chased after you for so long. It really bothers me. James looked at Laura and suddenly found her much more agreeable than before. His mood inexplicably improved, but Anna's recent behavior had really annoyed him. Even if he decided to forgive her now, she still deserved some punishment. Fine, then I'll kick her out. James casually pinched Laura's cheek, his tone indifferent. Who are you kicking out? The door, which had been left slightly ajar, was pushed open, and Raphael strode in. His voice wasn't loud, but it landed with a force that silenced the room. Everyone suddenly fell quiet, because behind Raphael stood a girl, and that girl was Anna. Chapter 17. James remained seated, unmoving, but the glass he had been toying with in his hand suddenly shattered under his grip. Laura let out a frightened scream. James, you're bleeding. Get out. James? I said get out. Didn't you hear me? Suddenly, James stood up and violently smashed the broken glass onto the floor. Laura stared at him in shock for a moment before bursting into tears and running out. The others in the room, sensing the tension, quickly followed suit and left. James's hand hung by his side, blood dripping onto the floor, but he didn't seem to feel any pain. Instead, he locked his gaze on Raphael. After a long silence, he raised his hand and pointed at me. Raphael, are you not going to explain this? Raphael's hand, hidden under his sleeve, tightened its grip even further. His strong, dry fingers gave me an unexplainable sense of comfort. Explain what? Why is Anna here with you? You were the one who invited me to bring my girlfriend to your birthday party. Remember? Raphael grasped my hand and pulled me closer, wrapping his arm around me. James seemed to turn into a furious beast in an instant. With his bleeding hand, he grabbed a nearby glass and hurled it onto the floor with a crash. Raphael, do you have any idea that Anna belongs to me? Belongs to you? As what? Your girlfriend or fiancé? Raphael didn't back down an inch. Or are you saying that just because a girl liked you, she automatically becomes your property, labeled as yours forever? James's eyes were bloodshot, filled with rage. You knew Anna liked me, and you still went behind my back. James, he didn't go behind your back. I squeezed Raphael's hand and looked at James. I was the one who made the first move. And besides, I don't like you. In fact, I stopped liking you a long time ago. I looked at him, suddenly realizing I had already moved on. After all, any girl with a bit of self-respect wouldn't continue to like someone who had never shown her the slightest bit of respect. Nor would she continue to like someone so cold and dismissive, treating her like she was disposable at his convenience. Maybe during those years growing up together, there were some vague feelings. But after the truth about my identity was revealed and his attitude drastically changed, whatever feelings I had already disappeared. Anna, what are you saying? James looked like he had just heard the most absurd thing. You almost jumped into the river for me, and now you're telling me you don't like me? I never intended to jump into the river for you. I went to the river that night just to find an excuse for Raphael to come pick me up. James froze. For a long moment, he stared at me with eyes filled with rage, gritting his teeth as he spoke slowly. So, the person in Raphael's bed that night was you? Chapter 18. That's right. It's me, James. Just focus on your own relationship. I told you that day, I will never bother you again. And I meant it. I'll never go back on that. I didn't look at him again. I grabbed Raphael's hand and turned to leave. Raphael, let's go home. I want to see what the new place looks like. But Raphael didn't move. He looked at James, his gaze calm but sharp, cutting like a blade. James, from now on, I don't want to hear anyone badmouthing my girlfriend. James completely lost control, his words reckless. Raphael, who do you think you are? Raphael just smiled coldly. If you're not sure who I am, why not ask your father when you get home? James suddenly fell silent. His eyes moved slowly from Raphael's face to mine. That once handsome face now twisted with something ugly. Anna, Raphael doesn't know you're not the real daughter of the Jiang family. Does he? Something that big, and you've been hiding it from him? That's pretty shady, don't you think? Chapter 19. I had been preparing for the day when my real identity would be revealed, but being exposed like this, so abruptly by James, still left me feeling embarrassed and at a loss. The hand Raphael held suddenly turned stiff and cold. Almost instantly, sweat gathered in my palm, layer after layer. Seeing how pale I had become, James laughed. So, you were hiding it from him after all. I knew it. If Raphael knew the truth about your background, he'd stay as far away from you as possible. Even if you threw yourself at him, he wouldn't even touch you. James. Raphael suddenly let go of my hand. His face was expressionless as he calmly rolled up his sleeves. Then he took off his watch and handed it to me. Before, I just thought you were a womanizer. A bad guy but not the worst. But now I realize. Raphael stepped forward, grabbed James by the collar, and slammed him hard against the wall. Not only are you a lowlife scumbag, James, enraged, tried to fight back, but Raphael swung a heavy punch into his face. You're also a coward, a waste. And James, I'm nothing like you. I'm not in love with some high and mighty daughter of a family. I'm in love with Anna. Just Anna. As long as her name is Anna. I love her. It's as simple as that. But Anna's already tainted. Before James could finish, Raphael punched him again, hard across the face. James cried out, clutching his bleeding nose and mouth, falling to the ground in a pathetic heap, afraid that Raphael might do something more dangerous. I rushed forward, grabbing him tightly. Raphael, stop! It's going to get out of hand. Raphael's face remained cold, but he stopped. He glanced at James, whose face was covered in blood, and pulled out his phone to call someone to clean up the mess. Then he wrapped his arm around me. Anna, let's go home. Chapter 20. As we reached the car, I suddenly called out to him, Raphael, do you believe me? Believe what? I looked up at Raphael. He was wearing a dark gray shirt, looking sharp, dignified, and incredibly handsome. Earlier, when he had gotten angry and hit James, if it had been the old me, I would have been terrified, running far away from him. But now, I just felt an overwhelming warmth. All these years, I had been desperately clinging to a lifeline, but it always turned out wrong. The elders who once loved me no longer treated me like a precious jewel. There were no beatings or scoldings, but the cold arrogance and emotional neglect were enough to push a teenage girl to the brink. The childhood sweetheart I grew up with saw me as beneath him, growing distant. My biological parents turned out to be greedy scum, demons who only cared about money. Every day and night, I lived in fear of being sent back to them, back into an abyss I could never escape. And I never knew, all this time, that someone had quietly loved me for so long. Thankfully, none of the nightmares from my dreams would happen. I didn't end up in despair, foolishly trying to trap James with my body. James and I, nothing ever happened. Anna, Raphael cupped my face and kissed me deeply. I clutched at his sleeve, my fingers tightening and loosening again. Raphael, when he kissed me so hard I could barely breathe. My legs went weak, and I had to hold onto his waist. Raphael's lips trailed down to my neck. Anna, I don't care about any of that, but hearing you say it still makes me happy. You know, men are always a little selfish about these things. I know, Raphael. I'm telling you this because I don't want him to throw dirt on my name. I'm saying it for you, but also for myself. With that, I smiled at him and snuggled closer into his coat. Raphael, let's go home quickly. It's freezing. All right. He took my hand, holding it tight, very tight, and that grip, it would last a lifetime. Chapter 21. Before my relationship with Raphael was fully public, I went to the Jiang family and spent the entire afternoon talking with the elders. In the end, with the mediation of Valentina, the true eldest daughter of the Jiang family, I regained my legal guardianship. From then on, I had no further ties with the Jiang family. I chose this timing because I knew the Jiang family all too well. If they found out about my relationship with Raphael, they would definitely latch onto the Wang family like vampires. And I didn't want Raphael or the Wang family to get entangled in such troubles. When I left the Jiang family, Mrs. Jiang wasn't too pleased. Anna, our family raised you for so many years, spent millions on you, and got nothing in return. Honestly, my mindset has completely changed now. The Jiang family raised me like a precious gem for 16 years, until the real Miss Jiang returned. I did go through a few painful years after that, but I never starved or suffered extreme hardship. And Valentina, who once held so much hostility towards me, for some reason, her attitude had suddenly changed. To be fair, when the Jiang family forced me to drop out of school and sent me back to my biological parents, Valentina had played a part in that. But now, she was also the one who spoke up for me. She helped me resolve my last lingering issue. She even convinced Mrs. Jiang not to spread the news about my disgraceful background all over town. Now, I am the free-spirited Anna. No person or thing can tie me down anymore. I am completely at peace with myself. Madam, I respectfully bowed to Mrs. Jiang. I will never forget the kindness of being raised by your family. Sounds nice enough. Mrs. Jiang gave me a cold look. You couldn't even manage to win over James, someone you've known since childhood. What hope do you have for the future? Forget it. Just leave. Even looking at you makes me upset. She waved her hand dismissively. I didn't bother explaining further. I only gave Valentina a quick glance. Mom, let me walk Anna out, Valentina offered. Mrs. Jiang's expression softened. Come back quickly. Dinner will be ready soon. I know. Valentina responded with a smile and led me out of the living room. We walked all the way to the garden, where we both stopped in sync. I looked at her, and she looked at me, and suddenly, we both started laughing. Sister, I said softly as I hugged her lightly. Thank you. At the same time, Valentina quietly whispered, Anna, I'm sorry. There were many things we didn't say, but we both understood. Valentina's apology was probably for the Anna in the dream. My eyes reddened, and Valentina's did too. In the end, she squeezed my hand tightly. Anna, this time, you must be very, very happy. I will. Sister, you too. I'll repay the Jiang family's kindness in another way. Through Valentina, she endured 16 years of suffering, while I enjoyed 16 years of privilege. In the dream, I hated her. But now, all of that is forgiven and forgotten. Chapter 22. When Raphael took me to meet his parents, to be honest, I was really nervous. Mrs. Wang had, for some reason, started practicing Buddhism a few years ago. Every year, without fail, she made a pilgrimage to the Puji temple to offer the first incense. Don't worry, my mom has been a Buddhist for a few years now. She's very kind. As for my dad, he listens to my mom. Raphael seemed to notice my anxiety and kept reassuring me the whole way. But the closer we got, the more nervous I became. Raphael, maybe another day? I'm scared. I tugged at his sleeve, refusing to take another step forward. Anna. Raphael shook his head helplessly. Mom is already coming out to meet us. Sure enough, Mrs. Wang had already stepped down from the stairs and was walking toward the car. I had no choice but to follow Raphael, bracing myself for what was to come. Mom, this is Anna. Hello, Mrs. Wang. I'm Anna. I greeted her politely, handing her the gift I had prepared. Mrs. Wang accepted the gift with a smile, but her eyes stayed on me. Even after we entered the living room, she kept looking at me. Soon, she decided to take me upstairs to her study. I was a bit scared and couldn't help but look at Raphael, hoping he would rescue me, but Mrs. Wang gently held my hand. Don't be afraid, Anna. Let's go upstairs and have a little chat. She then turned back to Raphael, teasing him with a smile. Don't worry. I'm not going to eat your fiancé. My face instantly turned red. Mrs. Wang seemed to be in an especially good mood and wouldn't let go of my hand. Look, Mr. Wang, isn't Anna just as I said? Beautiful and sweet. Mr. Wang was a very elegant and gentle man. He nodded in agreement with his wife. Indeed, very beautiful and sweet. She seems like a wonderful girl. I was completely lost and didn't know how to react. Mrs. Wang held onto my hand tightly, but her eyes grew slightly red. Anna, don't misunderstand. It may sound ridiculous, but for years, I've been having the same dream over and over. In the dream, Raphael never got married or had a family because of a girl. He passed away, all alone, in his 40s. At first, his father and I didn't believe it. We thought it was just a dream. But later, everything else from the dream started coming true. One by one, tears started streaming down Mrs. Wang's face. All these years, I've been eating vegetarian and praying for Raphael. I'm truly scared that the last part of the dream will come true. That's why I've always thought, if that girl really exists, how wonderful it would be for her to be with Raphael. Now that I see you, I know that all my years of prayers haven't been in vain. Anna, you and Raphael must take good care of each other. At some point, my vision had blurred with tears. There are people in this world like my biological parents, who were terrible, but then there are mothers like Mrs. Wang, who love their children deeply. How fortunate was I to meet Raphael and such a wonderful family? In that moment, I felt like all the regrets from my dreams had been fulfilled. Chapter 23. when Raphael and I graduated from college. We registered our marriage. The wedding was still in the planning stages. I wanted something simple and low-key, but neither Raphael nor the elders of the Wong family would agree. As soon as we registered, I moved into Raphael's house, while he went to the bathroom to take a shower. I found the pearl earring I had lost earlier under his pillow, but this time, I didn't put it back. Instead, I wore it on my ear, and that was all I wore, just the earring. When Raphael came out of the shower, I was lying on his bed, completely covered by his blanket, pretending to sleep. Anna? His warm, damp kiss fell gently on the side of my face. It tickled, and my eyelashes fluttered, but I still didn't open my eyes. Raphael seemed to chuckle softly, kissed me again, and then lifted the blanket to get into bed. But as soon as he lifted the covers, his whole body froze. Anna. The warm light from the bedside lamp spread gently across the room. It bathed my entire body, the soft glow of the pearl earring gleaming faintly beneath my hair. Between the curves of my body, light and shadow danced, casting subtle shapes. The contrast of black and white, with faint touches of red, was like a dish of white jade with cherries, tempting and irresistible. At first, I was embarrassed, so nervous that my hands and feet felt stiff. But seeing Raphael's expression in that moment, all my nervousness disappeared. I sat up and threw myself into his arms, wrapping my arms around his neck, just like that night in his dorm. I leaned close to his ear. Raphael, do you like it? You're staring. I could feel his entire body tense. His temperature began to rise, his skin burning as if his blood was boiling. His Adam's apple bobbed violently, and the veins in his neck stood out, looking incredibly sexy. I tilted my head and let my soft lips brush over the prominent vein. Finally, I kissed his Adam's apple, giving it a light bite. It was as if a floodgate had suddenly opened, or like a volcano that had slept for 1,000 years suddenly erupted. In an instant, Raphael flipped me onto the bed, taking control. His kisses were intense, deep, and heavy. I could hardly keep up. It felt like he was going to tear me apart. Anna. He kept calling my name, over and over, never tiring. But toward the end, he kissed me gently. If it hurts, bite me. I closed my eyes and gave a soft mem. My nails dug into his back, leaving deep marks on his shoulders. But it still hurt. It hurt so much I couldn't help but cry. Raphael. I looked at him through my tears, feeling a little wronged. He looked terrifying right now. Instinctively, I thought he wouldn't be able to stop himself. But Raphael stopped everything and held me close. I wrapped my arms around his waist, and suddenly remembered that day at the airport. I couldn't help but ask, didn't you say that day that begging wouldn't work, even if I cried? His eyes were still dark with desire, the tension clear on his face, showing how much he was struggling, how much he was holding back. Raphael held me tightly, and when he spoke, his voice was hoarse. I can't bear to hurt you. Raphael. Yeah? When did you start liking me? But he wouldn't answer, only holding me tighter. If you won't say it, I teased, looking up at him, then I won't say I like you either. Raphael suddenly looked at me. Beneath the waves of desire in his eyes, there was a depth of emotion stirring. After a long moment, he spoke softly. From the first time I saw you, Anna, I thought I'd never have the chance to tell you. A sharp pain suddenly struck my heart. It's okay, Raphael. Now we have a lifetime together. Yeah, now we have a lifetime. At some point, our fingers had intertwined tightly. When I leaned in to kiss him, he lowered his head and kissed me back with infinite tenderness. Raphael, I think it doesn't hurt anymore. Do you want to continue? The room soon filled with sounds that made my cheeks flush. They lingered for a long, long time. That night would be long, and even longer would be the lifetime we were about to spend together. In the midst of the surging tides of spring, our love would be whispered, gently and endlessly.